You're being reassigned to senior associate, effective immediately. My supervisor, Thomas Webb, said those words across the conference table on a Wednesday morning in November. 8 people sat around that table, all of them staring at me. My name is Caroline Pierce. I'm 34 years old, and I have been Director of Strategic Operations at Whitmore Solutions in Boston, Massachusetts for 4 years. Thomas slid a folder across the table. The reorganization memo is inside. Your new responsibilities start Monday. Someone coughed. Another person looked at their phone. Nobody said a word. I sat there feeling my face burn, but I kept my expression blank. I picked up the folder without opening it. Thomas leaned back, arms crossed. Any questions? I looked directly at him. No. He seemed disappointed, like he wanted me to argue, wanted me to break down, wanted something he could use against me later. I gave him nothing. The meeting ended. People filed out quickly. A few glanced back at me. Most didn't. I stayed in my seat for exactly 10 seconds. Then I stood, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked out with my head high. My hands wanted to shake. I didn't let them. In the hallway, I heard laughter from the conference room. Low voices. Someone said something I couldn't make out. More laughter. I kept walking. Something cold settled deep in my chest. I didn't recognize it yet, but it was determination. By Thursday afternoon, Kyle Renner had moved into my old office. He was 29 years old, business degree from a decent school. 3 years with the company. Decent enough at his job, but he had never led a team. Never closed a major deal. Never managed a budget over 6 figures. Now he had my title, Director of Strategic Operations. I walked past his office around 3. Saw him arranging photos on the shelf I had installed myself 2 years ago. He looked up, saw me through the glass, and immediately looked away. The nameplate on the door was already changed. Kyle Renner, Director of Strategic Operations. Mine had been removed, so fast I wondered if they had it ready before the meeting. I went to my new workspace. Not an office. A cubicle. Near the back. No window. No door. Just fabric walls and the hum of the air conditioning system. Someone had already moved my things. 3 boxes stacked on the desk. My diplomas. My awards. My coffee mug shaped like a Boston Terrier. Everything packed like I was being erased. I sat down in the cheap chair. It squeaked. My old chair had been leather. Comfortable. Earned. I opened my laptop and logged in. My access levels had already been changed. Half the folders I built were locked. Projects I created were reassigned. I took a slow breath, opened a blank document, and I started taking notes. Friday morning, I arrived at 7. Earlier than usual. The office was mostly empty. I went to my old office. Kyle wasn't there yet. The door was unlocked. I walked in like I belonged there. Because 4 days ago I did. The space looked different already. My books were gone. My client photos were gone. The whiteboard where I mapped strategies had been erased. Kyle had put up motivational posters. One said, "Success is a journey." I stared at it for a moment. Then I opened the filing cabinet. My files were still there. Contracts I had negotiated. Reports I had written. Client notes from calls I had handled personally. I pulled out my phone and photographed everything. Every page. Every signature. Every email printout. It took me 20 minutes. Then I put everything back exactly as I found it. I left the office. Closed the door quietly. Went back to my cubicle. By 8:30, people started arriving. Kyle walked past my desk without acknowledging me. Thomas walked past twice. Both times, he glanced at me with this little smile. Like he expected me to look broken. I looked busy instead. Focused on my screen. Taking notes. Building something he couldn't see yet. At lunch, I didn't go to the cafeteria. I stayed at my desk. Ate a sandwich. Kept working. 2 people stopped by. Both acted concerned. Both asked if I was okay. I smiled and said I was fine. They didn't believe me. That was fine too. I wasn't trying to convince anyone of anything. Not yet. The following week, I practiced something I had never been good at. Silence. I didn't complain. Didn't argue. Didn't send emotional emails. I showed up on time. Did my work. Answer questions when asked. Volunteered nothing. People didn't know what to make of it. Thomas seemed confused. He walked by my cubicle more often. Like he was checking to see if I was still there. Still functioning. Still compliant. I gave him nothing to use. At meetings, I sat quietly. Took notes. Didn't offer opinions, unless directly asked. And when I was asked, I kept my answers short and professional. Kyle started presenting my old projects as his own initiatives. He used my language, my frameworks, my data. I watched him do it and said nothing. One afternoon, Thomas stopped at my desk. "You're being very cooperative, Caroline." I looked up. "Thank you." He waited, like he expected me to say more. I didn't. He shifted his weight. "The transition has been smooth." I nodded. "Good to hear." He left looking unsettled. That evening, I went home to my apartment in Back Bay. I lived alone, kept things simple. I made dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a spreadsheet, started listing every project I had managed, every client I had brought in, every problem I had solved, every metric that improved under my leadership. It took 3 hours. When I finished, the document was 12 pages long. I saved it, backed it up, and I kept building. 2 weeks after the demotion, I started noticing things. Small things. Kyle was struggling. He missed deadlines I would have flagged weeks in advance. He double-booked client calls. He approved budgets without reviewing the details. He was drowning, but nobody seemed to notice yet. Or maybe they noticed and didn't care. I watched it happen from my cubicle. I didn't offer help. Didn't point out mistakes. Just observed. One afternoon, Kyle came to my desk. He looked stressed. Tired. "Hey, Caroline. Can I ask you something?" "Sure." He glanced around. Lowered his voice. "The Harrington account. You handled that last year, right?" I did. "Do you remember how you structured the pricing model?" I remembered perfectly. I had spent 2 months negotiating that contract. But I tilted my head like I was trying to recall. "It's been a while." "Why?" "I'm supposed to renew it next month. I'm just making sure I have all the details." I nodded slowly. "It should all be in the files." He shifted. "Yeah, I looked. It's just a lot of information." I smiled. "I'm sure you'll figure it out." He waited, hoping I would offer more. I didn't. He forced a smile. "Right. Thanks anyway." He walked away. I went back to my work. But I opened a new document. Typed the date. Typed his name. Typed what he asked. I was building something. A timeline. A record. Evidence that nobody asked for yet. But they would. In early December, there was a meeting about a major project. A potential partnership with a tech firm in Austin, Texas. It was worth $3 million over 2 years. I had been developing that relationship for 6 months. Setting up calls. Sending proposals. Building trust. Then I got demoted. The meeting happened without me. I found out when I saw it on the shared calendar. 10 people invited. My name wasn't on the list. I didn't ask why. I already knew. That afternoon, I ran into Kyle in the hallway. He looked uncomfortable. Hey. The Austin project is moving forward." "That's good." "Yeah. We're presenting to their team next week." I nodded. "Best of luck." He hesitated. "You did a lot of the groundwork on that one." I did. He looked like he wanted to say more. He didn't. Later that day, I reviewed the project proposal. Someone had forwarded it to me by mistake. Probably copied the wrong email list. I opened it, read through it carefully, and I found the problem immediately. The pricing structure was wrong. They had miscalculated the service fees by nearly 20%. It wasn't a small error. It was the kind of mistake that would kill the deal. Or worse, get us locked into a contract we couldn't fulfill profitably. I stared at the document, thought about sending an email, pointing it out, saving them. Then I closed the file. I didn't delete it. I just saved it with a new name. Timestamped. Documented. And I said nothing. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a half-written email. The subject line said, "Austin Project, pricing error." I had typed 3 paragraphs, explained the miscalculation, showed the correct numbers, offered to walk them through it. My finger hovered over the send button. Then I stopped. I thought about the conference room, the laughter, the smirks, the way Thomas slid that folder across the table like I was disposable. I thought about Kyle moving into my office within 24 hours. I thought about the boxes stacked on my desk like trash. I thought about the people who said nothing. I highlighted the entire email, deleted it, closed my laptop. I wasn't being petty. I was being strategic. They had made it clear they didn't value my input, didn't want my leadership, didn't need my expertise, so I wouldn't force it on them. I would let them learn the hard way. I poured another glass of wine, sat on my couch, stared at the city lights through my window. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns hot and fast. This was colder, sharper. I was building a case, not for revenge, for vindication. There's a difference. Revenge is emotional. Vindication is factual. I didn't need them to suffer. I just needed them to see exactly what they had thrown away. And I needed documentation when they finally realized their mistake. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, Kyle stopped by my cubicle again. He had a folder in his hand. Looked nervous. "Hey, Caroline. Got a minute?" "Sure." He sat down in the empty chair next to my desk. "I need some help with something." "What's up?" "The Marshall contract renewal. You worked on that last quarter, right?" "I did." He opened the folder. "There's a clause in here about performance benchmarks. I'm not sure how to interpret it." He slid the contract across my desk. I glanced at it, recognized my own notes in the margins. It's pretty straightforward. The benchmarks reset annually based on delivery timelines. He frowned. "But what if we don't hit them?" "Then, the pricing adjusts according to the penalty structure." Section 4. He flipped to Section 4. "Read it." Looked more confused. "So we could end up paying them? If we miss deadlines, yes." He leaned back. "That seems risky." "It is. That's why I built in buffer time in the project schedule." He looked at me. "Where's that schedule?" "Should be in the shared drive. Under Marshall folder." He nodded slowly. "Okay. Thanks." He started to leave, then stopped. "Caroline, why didn't you say something about this before?" "You didn't ask before." He looked uncomfortable. "Right." He left. I went back to my work. But I made another note. Date. Time. What he asked. What I told him. Building the file. By mid-December, I had been documenting everything for a month. I had a folder on my personal laptop, password protected. Inside were spreadsheets, screenshots, emails, meeting notes, project files. Everything organized by date and category. I tracked every decision Kyle made that contradicted my previous strategy. Every deadline he missed that I would have caught. Every client question he couldn't answer. I tracked every time Thomas took credit for work I had done. Every meeting I was excluded from. Every project that started falling apart without my oversight. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it because I knew something they didn't. The truth always surfaces. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And when it did, I wanted proof. At work, I remained calm. Professional. Unremarkable. I answered emails. Attended meetings. Completed assignments. I was the model employee. Quiet. Cooperative. Invisible. People stopped noticing me. That was exactly what I wanted. One afternoon, I was in the break room making coffee. 2 colleagues walked in. They didn't see me at first. I was behind the door. "Did you hear Kyle miss the Austin presentation?" "No." "What happened?" "He mixed up the time zones. Showed up an hour late." They laughed. "Thomas is furious." I stayed quiet, kept pouring my coffee. They noticed me and stopped talking. I smiled politely. Walked out. Back at my desk, I opened my documentation file. Added the information. Austin presentation. Missed by Kyle. December 14th. The file was getting thick. A week before Christmas, something unexpected happened. I got a call from a client. His name was Thomas Garrison, CEO of a manufacturing company in Ohio. We had worked together on a supply chain optimization project 8 months ago. I had led the entire engagement. "Caroline, it's Tom Garrison." "Hi, Tom. How are you?" "Good. Listen, we're expanding into 2 new facilities. I want to bring Whitmore back in for another project." "That's great. You should contact Kyle Renner. He's the director now." "Kyle, I need you. You know our operation. You know our team." "I'm not in that role anymore, Tom." "What do you mean?" "I was reassigned." "To what?" Senior associate. There was a long pause. That makes no sense. It was a company decision. Tom's voice got harder. Who do I talk to about this? You can reach out to Thomas Webb. He's my supervisor. Or Kyle. Give me Kyle's email. I gave it to him. We talked for a few more minutes. He was clearly unhappy. When we hung up, I sat back in my chair, stared at the ceiling. That call mattered. Tom Garrison wasn't just any client. His company represented $4 million in annual revenue. If he requested me specifically and got redirected to Kyle, there would be questions. I didn't follow up, didn't insert myself. I just waited. 3 days later, I saw an email chain. Tom had reached out to Kyle. Kyle responded. Tom replied asking for me by name. Kyle escalated it to Thomas. Thomas replied saying I was no longer in a client-facing leadership role. Tom didn't respond after that. The project stalled. I saved the entire email chain, added it to my file. The cracks were starting to show. In early January, Kyle missed a critical deadline. It was for the Austin project. The one with the pricing error I had found and said nothing about. They were supposed to deliver a revised proposal by January 10th. The deadline passed. No proposal. I heard about it through the office chatter. Kyle had been working on it for weeks, but he miscalculated the resource allocation, underestimated the hours. The numbers didn't work. The client pushed back, asked for clarification. Kyle couldn't provide it. Thomas got involved. There was a tense meeting in the conference room. I wasn't invited, but I could see through the glass walls. Thomas was standing, arms crossed, face red. Kyle was sitting, looking down at his notes. 2 other managers were there. Both looked uncomfortable. The meeting lasted an hour. When it ended, Kyle walked out looking pale. Thomas stayed behind, made a phone call, looked angry. I didn't ask what happened. I didn't need to. That evening, I checked my personal documentation. The Austin project had been flagged in my notes back in early December. Pricing error identified. No action taken. I had a screenshot of the original proposal, a screenshot of my unsent email, a timestamp showing I had caught the mistake weeks before it became a crisis. I updated the file, added notes about the missed deadline, the failed proposal, the client pushback. Then I backed everything up, saved it in 3 separate locations. And I waited. 2 weeks later, I had my annual performance review. It was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Thomas conducted it in a small conference room. No windows, just a table and 2 chairs. He had a folder in front of him, sat down without greeting me. Let's get through this. He opened the folder, slid a paper across the table. I glanced at it. Overall rating, meets expectations. I read through the comments. Adequate performance. Completes tasks as assigned. Limited initiative. No leadership qualities demonstrated. Every word was designed to justify the demotion, to create a paper trail that said I deserve this. I read it twice. Then I looked up at Thomas. Any questions? No. He seemed surprised. You're not going to push back? There's nothing to push back on. This is your assessment. He leaned forward. Caroline, I'm trying to be fair here. I nodded. I understand. You've been very compliant since the reassignment. I do my job. He watched me carefully. You're not upset. I didn't say that. But getting upset doesn't change anything. He closed the folder. You need to sign this. I picked up the pen. Signed my name at the bottom. Slid it back across the table. He took it. Looked at my signature. You're taking this better than I expected. I stood. Is that all? Yes. I left the room. Walked back to my cubicle. Sat down. Opened my laptop. And I saved a copy of that review in my documentation file. They were building a case against me. I was building a case against them. The difference was mine had evidence. In February, I noticed something strange. My name disappeared from the executive update distribution list. It was a weekly email, sent every Monday. Included company news, project updates, strategic initiatives. I had been on that list for 4 years. Then suddenly I wasn't. I didn't ask why. I already knew. 2 weeks later, my name reappeared. I got the Monday email again. Then the following week I didn't. It kept happening. On the list. Off the list. On again. Off again. It was sloppy. Inconsistent. Like someone kept forgetting whether I was supposed to be included or not. I tracked it, made a spreadsheet, documented every week, whether I received the email or not, what information I missed, what decisions were made without my knowledge. One afternoon, I was walking past Thomas's office. The door was open. He was on the phone. I heard my name. I slowed down. Didn't stop walking. Just listened. She's been fine. Quiet. No problems. A pause. No, I don't think she's a flight risk. Another pause. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it. I kept walking. Got back to my desk. Opened my notes. Recorded what I heard. They were monitoring me. Discussing me. Trying to figure out if I was going to leave. Or sue. Or cause problems. I wasn't going to do any of those things. I was going to let them destroy themselves. And I was going to document every step. By March, the numbers started telling a story. Project completion rates were down 18% compared to the same period last year. Client retention had dropped. 2 major accounts had gone quiet. The Austin deal had fallen through completely. The Harrington renewal that Kyle asked me about back in November was still pending. The client was frustrated, threatening to walk. I knew all of this because I still had access to the project dashboards. My clearance had been reduced, but not eliminated. I could see the metrics, and the metrics were bad. One afternoon, there was an emergency leadership meeting. I saw it added to the calendar last minute. Directors and above. Kyle was in there. Thomas was in there. The VP of operations was in there. I wasn't. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When people came out, they looked tense. Kyle looked exhausted. Thomas looked angry. That evening, I stayed late. Most people had left. I went to the shared drive, opened the quarterly reports folder. The draft report was there. Unfinished, but readable. Revenue was down. Project margins were thin. Client satisfaction scores had dropped 6 points. I read through it carefully. Then I cross-referenced it with my own documentation. Every problem they were facing could be traced back to projects I used to manage. Projects that had been reassigned, mismanaged, neglected. I took screenshots, saved everything, updated my file. The story was getting clearer. They had pushed me out, and everything I had been holding together started falling apart. They just didn't realize it yet. In late March, Kyle presented at a company-wide meeting. The topic was strategic growth initiatives for Q2. I attended, sat in the back, watched. Kyle stood at the front of the room, projector screen behind him. Confidence that seemed forced. He talked about optimizing client engagement, streamlining project delivery, improving margins. All phrases I had used, all strategies I had developed. He clicked through slides. Most of them were based on frameworks I had built. My language, my models, my data. He didn't credit me once. I sat there watching him take ownership of my work, and I said nothing. After the presentation, people clapped politely. Kyle looked relieved. Then someone raised their hand. A senior manager named Victor Hayes. I had worked with him on 2 projects. He was sharp, direct. Kyle, can you walk us through the decision tree on slide 8? Kyle looked at the slide. The decision tree for client prioritization. Sure. He started explaining. But he got it wrong. Confused the criteria. Mixed up the weighting system. Victor frowned. That doesn't align with what we discussed in February. Kyle hesitated. Well, we adjusted the model. Why? Kyle looked uncomfortable. To improve accuracy. But the previous model was already statistically validated. Who approved the changes? Kyle glanced at Thomas. We felt it was necessary. Victor didn't look convinced. The room got quiet. Kyle moved on quickly. After the meeting, I went back to my desk. Opened my documentation. Added notes. Kyle presented my work. Couldn't explain it. Contradicted the methodology. March 28th. The foundation was cracking. 2 days later, there was another leadership meeting. This time I was included. It was unusual. I hadn't been invited to a leadership meeting since my demotion. But there I was. On the calendar. Conference room B. 2 o'clock. I showed up on time. Thomas was already there. So was Kyle. 2 other directors. And the VP of operations, a woman named Patricia Oakes. She was tough, fair, didn't tolerate nonsense. Patricia started the meeting. We need to discuss the Harrington account. It's been stalled for 4 months. We're at risk of losing them. Kyle shifted in his seat. I've been working on it. Sir. I handed him the folder. He took it, gestured to a chair. Sit. I sat. He opened the folder, started reading. I waited. He didn't skim. He read every page, took notes, asked occasional questions. It took 40 minutes. When he finished, he closed the folder, looked at me. This is thorough. Thank you. He leaned back. Why didn't you bring this to me sooner? I wasn't asked. And now I was. He nodded slowly. You've been documenting everything. Yes, sir. Why? Because the truth matters. And you thought it would come out eventually. I did. He smiled slightly. You were right. Thomas kept the folder. Told me he would review it with Patricia and the board. Told me to continue my work as usual. I left his office feeling lighter. Not triumphant. Just relieved. The truth was out. Not speculation. Not complaints. Just facts. 2 days later, Thomas called me into his office. He closed the door, sat behind his desk, didn't invite me to sit. What did you tell Whitmore? The truth. What truth? The truth about project performance, about client relationships, about what's changed since November. His face got red. You went over my head. I was asked directly by the CEO. You're trying to sabotage me. I'm trying to do my job. Thomas stood, leaned forward, hands on his desk. You think you're clever, documenting everything, playing the victim. I didn't respond. He continued, You're done here. You understand that? One way or another you're done. I looked at him calmly. If that's true, then it's true. But it won't change what I reported. He stared at me, realizing he had no power anymore. The information was already out. I turned and left. Didn't wait for dismissal. Went back to my cubicle. That afternoon, Kyle walked past. Didn't look at me. 30 minutes later, he left the building, carrying a box. People whispered. I didn't ask. The next morning, Kyle's office was empty. Nameplate removed. Desk cleared. He was gone. Just like that. Reassigned, someone said. Another office. Another city. I didn't feel victorious. I felt vindicated. On Monday, I was called upstairs again. Thomas's office. This time, Patricia was there too. They both stood when I entered. Sat down, Caroline. I sat. They sat across from me. Not behind the desk. Across. Like equals. Thomas spoke first. We've completed the review. Your documentation was invaluable. I nodded. Patricia continued. We found significant issues. Mismanagement. Poor decision-making. Lack of oversight. Projects that should have succeeded but failed due to inadequate leadership. She paused. The demotion was a mistake. I didn't respond. Thomas leaned forward. Thomas Webb has been reassigned to a non-leadership role. Effective immediately. He'll be transitioning out of the company within 60 days. Kyle Renner has been moved to an entry-level position in our Denver office. The Director of Strategic Operations role is open. They both looked at me. Patricia spoke. We'd like to offer it back to you. I sat there, processing. Not shocked. Not emotional. Just clear. What are the terms? Same salary as before. Plus a 15% increase. Retroactive to November. Full authority over the department. Direct reporting line to me, Thomas said. And an apology. From the company. Officially. I looked at both of them. When would I start? Immediately. I took a breath. Then I nodded. I accept. They both smiled. Thomas stood. Extended his hand. Welcome back, Director Pierce. I shook it. Then Patricia's. They walked me out. The executive assistant smiled at me. Congratulations were already spreading. By the time I got back to my floor, people knew. I could see it in their faces. The announcement came that afternoon. Company-wide email. Organizational changes. Thomas Webb transitioning to advisory role. Kyle Renner reassigned. Caroline Pierce reinstated as Director of Strategic Operations. Effective immediately. My phone started buzzing. Text messages. Emails. Calls. People congratulating me. People who had been silent for months suddenly had plenty to say. I didn't respond to most of them. The ones who mattered, who had stayed professional throughout, I thanked personally. The rest got silence. I packed up my cubicle. 3 boxes again. But this time I was moving up, not out. I carried them to my old office. The door was open. The space had been cleaned. Cal's motivational posters were gone. My books were stacked on the shelf. Someone had retrieved them from storage. The leather chair was back. My nameplate was on the door. Caroline Pierce, Director of Strategic Operations. I set the boxes down, stood in the doorway, looked at the space that had been taken from me, and then returned. It felt different now. Not like coming home, like claiming something I had earned twice. I sat down at the desk, opened my laptop, logged in. My access was fully restored. Every folder, every system, every tool I needed to do my job. I took a slow breath. Then I got to work. 2 days later, there was a company-wide meeting. Town hall style. Everyone gathered in the main conference hall. Thomas stood at the front, Patricia beside him. I sat in the 3rd row, not hiding, not front and center, just present. Thomas began. We've made some significant organizational changes this week. Some of you have questions. I want to address them directly. He pulled up a slide. Performance metrics. The ones showing the decline over the past 4 months. These numbers tell a story about what happens when we don't value the right people, when we prioritize politics over performance, when we make decisions based on favoritism instead of merit. The room was silent. He continued, several months ago, we made a leadership change that we believed would strengthen our operations. It didn't. In fact, it did the opposite. He looked directly at me. We demoted someone who had been holding this department together. Someone whose work spoke for itself. Someone we should have protected instead of sidelined. People turned to look at me. I kept my expression neutral. Thomas went on. I take responsibility for not seeing it sooner. But I'm grateful to the person who documented the truth, who stayed professional even when treated unfairly, who waited for the right moment instead of reacting emotionally. He paused. Caroline Pierce has been reinstated as Director of Strategic Operations. Not as a favor, as a correction. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then the entire room. The applause built. I sat there, not smiling, not celebrating, just accepting it. Thomas waited for it to fade. Then he said, let this be a lesson. Competence matters. Integrity matters. And if you see something wrong, document it. Speak up. The truth always wins. Eventually, the meeting ended. People approached me. Some apologized. Some acted like nothing had happened. Some avoided me entirely. I treated everyone the same. Professional. Cordial. Detached. Because I had learned something important over the past 4 months. Not everyone deserves your energy. That Friday, I stayed late at the office. Most people had left. The building was quiet. I sat at my desk. The desk that was mine again. I opened my laptop. Looked at the documentation file I had built. 63 pages. 4 months of evidence. Timelines. Screenshots. Emails. Notes. Everything that had brought me back to this moment. I didn't delete it. I saved it to an external drive. Locked it in my drawer. Not because I thought I would need it again, but because it reminded me of something important. The truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be accurate. I thought about the conference room. The laughter. The smirks. The way Thomas slid that folder across the table. I thought about the boxes stacked on my desk like trash. I thought about the months of silence, of documentation, of watching everything fall apart while I waited. I didn't feel victorious. I felt grounded, clear. I knew my worth now in a way I hadn't before. Not because someone gave me a title, but because I had proven it to myself. I stood up, turned off my computer, grabbed my coat, walked through the empty office, past the cubicle where I had sat for 4 months, past the conference room where I had been humiliated, past Thomas's old office, now empty. I got to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. The doors opened. I stepped inside. As they closed, I saw my reflection in the polished metal. I didn't look triumphant. I didn't look broken. I looked like someone who had survived. And that was enough.